high. David Coulthard knows what it's like to drive this circuit. It takes a long straight to a whole new level.
It does indeed. This is the longest straight on the Grand Prix calendar, so not a lot for the drivers to do there, but thankfully the rest of the track is action-packed.
We've been coming here for 12 years, we were saying on this programme last night. Do you think, though, that Formula One has started to crack China at all?
In terms of the fans in the grandstands, it doesn't appear that that's the case. You know, why we haven't managed to connect with it, it's because we just not have a local hero, then that's quite possibly why it hasn't seemed to have gripped this country in the same way that some other nations have got behind Formula One.
Lewis Hamilton has been fastest in all 3 practice sessions so far over the weekend. But even though he didn't win the last Grand Prix, he's certainly not lacking in form or confidence.
He looks fantastic. Every time he's taken to the racetrack, he's looked solid. I'm seeing less mistakes. If you remember last year, there was quite a few mistakes through free practice sessions, and although he was delivering on race day, he just looks like he's within himself and comfortable. And at the moment, although it was incredibly close with Nico Rosberg, it's like he's broken his will.
Yeah. OK, well, Ben Edwards can take us through qualifying. Here it is.
Unlike 12 months ago, conditions were ideal for qualifying, and in the first part, all eyes were on the McLaren Hondas to see whether they could break into Q2 for the first time this year, as Button had been 15th in practice. Sadly, it wasn't to be the case. Button wound up 17th, and Fernando Alonso was 18th, having struggled with the car at the crucial sequence onto the main straight. Also out at this early stage were the 2 Marussias and the Force India of Nico Hülkenberg. Having saved tyres in Q1, Lewis Hamilton soon stamped his authority on Q2 with the first lap of the weekend at the 1-minute 36-second bracket. But amongst those in the top 10 bubble, there was disappointment for the 2 Toro Rossos of Sainz and Verstappen, as well as Maldonado's Lotus and Perez in the Force India. But perhaps the more surprising elimination was that of Danny Kvyat in the Red Bull, who appeared to be suffering a lack of power and will start the Grand Prix in 12th. On a brighter note, both Saubers made the top 10 shootout, and as the session began, it looked as though Ferrari would be Mercedes' closest challengers. But it never came together for Kimi Raikkonen, whose scrappy lap was only good enough for 6th, and he was beaten by both Williams. Massa, a touch faster than Bottas. Sebastian Vettel was able to uphold Ferrari honour to go 3rd at the end, but the front row was always going to be a Mercedes lockout. Hamilton set a 1-minute 35-second lap that put in 2/10 ahead of Rosberg, but each had a second set of tyres available, and Hamilton made a couple of tiny errors on his final attempt. That left an opening for Rosberg, but he couldn't quite grab it and missed out on pole by just 0.04 of a second. So Hamilton takes a hat-trick for the season, and indeed for the last 3 years here, while Rosberg goes back to the drawing board and Vettel hopes for a race day like he had in Malaysia.
Today, my first lap was good, but the second lap wasn't so good. So there was more time there, and for me that's a positive, whilst obviously you could look at it completely the other way and be angry at yourself. Fortunately we still got pole.
And in terms of tomorrow, you know, you are strong round here. We've seen you win round here before, the team have won round here before, but what lessons have been learned since Malaysia?
Well, we know that Ferrari are very good with their long runs, and it appears the case here. They're not really that far behind pace-wise either, so I think they could still pose a threat tomorrow, and you know, tomorrow's still going to be a massively challenging race, obviously between me and Nico and Sebastian. So yeah, I've just got to make sure I do lots of work tonight and tomorrow to make sure that I finish where I want to finish.
So Lewis Hamilton dominating qualifying again. Nico Rosberg last year was the Saturday man, Lewis Hamilton the Sunday man. That seems to have changed this season.
Well, that's really worrying for Nico Rosberg because, you know, he had the speed last year and struggled to convert as many of those into race wins. Well, if he's not getting the opportunity to be in the prime spot at the start of the race, then, you know, have we seen enough of the racer in Nico to be able to outrace Lewis? So far, no.
So how has Lewis changed this?
Well, he just looks a lot more comfortable within whether it's winning that second title has just made him sit back and relax. There was, you know, it looked like there was slight elements of desperation when he was going for the single lap last year, and that was something that was always his previous strength, but he seems to have rediscovered that and he's delivering.
Well, Nico Rosberg was left frustrated today. He was close, but just not close enough.
400s, you know, it's such a tiny margin, and a lap is never perfect. It was a really good lap today, but never perfect, you know, and so 400s is always possible to find it somewhere, so that does bother me.
In terms of tomorrow, where do you need to get Lewis? Does it have to be off the start, or are there opportunities through strategy?
No, there's the start, and then there's also a lot of opportunities on the strategy for sure. It's going to be tough with tyres tomorrow.
400ths of a second today, not even a blink of an eye. It's tough to work out where he lost that from his point of view.
Well, he's been looking like the last sector is where he's been strong, and crucially, Lewis has been quicker in the other two sectors. There's an interesting offset in top speed. So, although they're not telling us there, of course, how they set their cars up, it seems to me that it would be plausible that Nico's set up with slightly less downforce. So, not been able to get as much out of it in the beginning of the lap, but set up perfectly for overtaking in the race.
Well, somebody else will be hoping for the same as Sebastian Vettel. He starts third for tomorrow's race.
It was a good session for us. We managed, even though we only had one run in Q3, to nail that run and to put the car on P3. Bit of a shame not to put both cars side by side. I don't know, I think as far as I was told, Kimi had some issues with traffic on the warm-up lap, and with these temperatures, I think everyone is relying on the out lap to nail it on the flying one. But overall, it's important for us to keep confirming that the pace is there, and very happy with that.
So Seb, justifiably happy. We are expecting Ferrari to have a better race car tomorrow, but it's Kimi Räikkönen, he'll be left frustrated.
Yeah, again, Kimi just a little bit scrappy when it really counted, and we know now that he felt that his outlap had been suboptimal and his tyres weren't quite up to temperature, so gets wide through 3, still having a moment as he tries to get the power down through 4. And it's moments like that when you know everything has to be as close to perfect as possible. We heard Nico Rosberg saying you'll never ever do the perfect lap. They always feel there'll be something you could have picked up, but certainly mistakes like that are costing you a couple of attempts.
Well, Williams were wondering where they were after the Malaysian Grand Prix. They weren't happy. Felipe Massa was much happier today, though.
The lap was really amazing lap, so I managed to take the best out of the car on the right time. So it was really a good lap. So happy for the performance today. So we show that we're still in the fight. You know, we show that even if Ferrari show that they are very competitive, and they will be tomorrow anyway, we are there, and we will try everything tomorrow to achieve the maximum points our car can achieve.
Well, it's a relief for Williams. I think they were left scratching their heads after the performance in Malaysia, but Massa seems to be happy today. Valtteri Bottas was as well. Yeah,
but their car looks as if it's a bit loose. You know, when we were watching them through the qualifying session, it just doesn't look as balanced as it has, certainly it showed last year and at the beginning of the season. So I think that's going to compound itself in how they use the tyres during the Grand Prix. So reasonable qualifying, but let's judge how they perform in the race.
And what would have changed that makes that happen?
Downforce. And, you know, ultimately, if you don't have that downforce balance, it's all fine and well creating figures in the wind tunnel that say you've got massive downforce. But if it's unusable when the driver's moving over curbs and, you know, with all the yaw and everything that goes on with the race car, then it becomes very unpredictable.
OK, well, talking of struggling race cars, let's move on to McLaren. Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso both went out in Q1 today. Jenson, though, said there was a bit more to come.
We expected to be closer to the top 10, not to be in the top 10, but I think in terms of lap time we thought we'd be closer. But we weren't, so yeah, a little bit surprised. The car actually didn't feel too bad. It wasn't the perfect lap, but even so, it wouldn't have got us into Q2. So a little bit puzzling, but the car itself, the feeling of the car through corner balance is relatively good. So there are obviously areas we need to improve on to get into Q2, and we're working very hard in those areas.
It's strange, Jenson and Fernando, when you speak to them, they don't seem too frustrated, but I imagine inside it must be a slightly different feeling. Are they putting on brave faces for the media?
I think that they do believe that the potential to take this forward is there. And while you believe there's potential, it gives you hope. It's the moment you feel that, you know, you're reaching the end of a particular relationship that things break down. But they say the car is nice to drive, it's balanced, it's lacking in horsepower, and if they can unleash that power from Honda, then they'll definitely take a big step forward.
What about Red Bull? Daniel Ricciardo in the top 10 today. Daniel Kvyat really struggling all weekend with brake problems.
Yeah, he's looked a bit scrappy out on track. They've changed the brake material. They've still got some rear issues with overheating, so they're having to just open up the cooling. And when you lose that flow, especially for the younger drivers, when they don't have the confidence to really know how to average out a lap, if you're still searching and looking for, expecting it to be perfect, then that can lead to disappointment.